You're listening to the Men's Mental Health Podcast, The Man Hug.
Welcome to The Man Hug, the monthly men's mental health podcast. I'm Dean McShane.
I'm Dan Cooper.
I'm Ian Pearce-Hayes.
And I'm Conleth Kelly.
Each month we will discuss a different topic related to men's mental health, which will include a guest speaker who will discuss their own personal story. And each month we will also be showcasing an organisation or charity within the Merseyside area who work within mental health to help build your signposting skills. Hello, welcome to this special edition University Mental Health Day podcast with the Man Hug and the Proper Mental podcast. Tom, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's cool to be here, man. I appreciate the offer.
Amazing. So Tom, for anyone that doesn't know, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, well, I suppose I always like to say that the most important things I am is a husband and a father. And as well as that, I work for an organisation here in Liverpool called the First Person Project. We're a mental health support organisation, a not-for-profit. We work all over the region. And something else that I do is host a podcast called Proper Mental, which I've been doing for some time, which was kind of my route into working in the mental health space and a few of the other things I do. So that's me in a nutshell, I suppose.
Brilliant. So we're big fans of your podcast. So for anyone who doesn't know, anyone who's not listened, what is the Proper Mental podcast?
It's a show about mental health and mental illness and mental well-being and kind of anything under that umbrella, really. I think over the years as it's evolved and maybe my understanding of my own experiences and other people's experiences, that umbrella has come to incorporate all sorts of things, really. But that's essentially what it is in a nutshell. I speak to someone every week about a different aspect of these things, and that's kind of it, really. It's been going for 5 years. I'm on 230 something episodes as we speak. And it's been really good. It was a little hobby. It sort of came out of nothing, and it's amazing that I'm still doing it, really, and that people listen is still baffling to me.
No, fair play to you. Because we've mentioned on here, I think longevity for a podcast is pretty hard, isn't it? Majority of them don't see past 6 months, for example. Your passion is clearly what's driving it still. So again, kind of for anyone that's looking for a new podcast, what can they expect with your podcast?
It's scruffy. It's scruffy by design. It's called Proper Mental, which is a quote from myself talking about my own mental health. But yeah, it's scruffy. It's loose around the edges. I keep it like that on purpose. I think a lot of podcasts are really, there's a lot of amazing shows out there, but they're all very, very polished and everything's very nice and very tidy and in very neat boxes with bows on. And my experiences of mental ill health weren't like that at all. And my experience was scruffy and chaotic and scary, and I was still kind of, even now many years later, I'm still trying to work out the best words to use. And I wanted to create something that represented that. I wanted something that was really kind of in the trenches, and really talking about the tip of the spear, really, when it comes to mental illness. I think that's missing. I think it's a lot of stuff is very palatable and very surface level, and I wanted to kind of really get into the darkness of it. And that's not to say that it's really depressing. I don't really trade off the sad stories. But yeah, that's it. I kind of think of it. Why I like podcasting is that it's kind of like that, that punk rock DIY ethos, like a guitar and 3 chords and you can start a band. And podcasting's a bit like that, right? And I kind of think of Proper Mental as that, I'm the punk rock contingent and, really sort of, I don't know, opening cans of worms and digging around in things maybe I shouldn't be. And that's the bit of it I'm most proud of. That's the bit I most enjoy, really.
Yeah. Where did the idea come from then?
So if we rewind a little bit, in 2016 I had a mental health breakdown. I'm not overly keen on that term, but I'll use it, and maybe I can add a bit of context to that in a bit. But I had a mental health breakdown, and I sort of bounced in and around crisis for about 4 years. It was a pretty wild time, and eventually I had a Well, I tried to hurt myself on a couple of occasions, and it was a planned suicide attempt that was interrupted by a relative of mine that led me to actually getting some help and starting to get a bit better and things like that. And when I'd been off work for some time at this point, and I started to re-engage with the community and like my friends and people around, and go back to work. And I realised that I'd have to start being a bit more honest about my experiences. I was that classic thing, when like someone dies by suicide and everyone goes, "Oh, we had no idea." Well, that was me. People would have said that about me. How, I don't know, because every ounce of my behaviour was trying to get attention and trying to let people know that I was struggling. So how no one spotted it, I don't know. I was trying really hard without actually asking for help to try and get some help. But I decided I was going to be more honest about it, and I started to, if I was out and about, if I was with the kids in the park and I'd bump into someone I hadn't seen for a while and they'd say, like, "Where have you been, man?" And I'd say, "Well, I've had some problems with my mental health and, I'm getting better and I'll be back, back out and about soon." And I was always so scared to talk about about any sort of struggle, because I just thought that, I thought that people would be scared of it. I thought that I'd be ostracised. I thought that, I'm a dad. At that time, I had 2 babies under the age of 2, and I thought they were going to get took off me. I thought, all these things. And when I started being a bit more open about it, what I found is that, like, no one ran away and no one flinched. And, I'd be in a coffee shop and someone would say, like, "Oh, my uncle died by suicide," or "My sister has anxiety." And before you know it, I'm having these, like, really, like, nourishing, beautiful, deep conversations, like, out of nowhere, like in the middle of the high street or whatever. And that sort of planted a seed, really. That kind of set me off on a bit of a path. Although I was much better, I wasn't harmful to myself anymore, but I was still nowhere near well, and I still didn't really understand my experience. But I started to kind of piece it together from learning about other people's experiences. So I kind of set out on this mission, really, just to have these conversations, more to educate myself, because I didn't really know what had happened. It'd been really, really scary, and I didn't really know what it was or have the words for it. So it was partly that. And the other thing that I can't think played into it is, I used to have these, when I was really unwell, I used to have these kind of, I suppose you call it like a dark night of the soul, where I'd be up all night, and I'd just have this internal push and pull. Like, half of me would be like really struggling with the idea of taking my own life, and then there'd be half of me that was just desperate not to do that and get some help. And it was a bit like being on a pirate ship at Alton Towers or something. I'd just swing between wanting help and all the way through the other way to not wanting help at all, and to try to kill myself, really. And I'd Google stuff, and my Google search history would be, on one hand, it would be like, "How do you know if you've got depression?" And, free mental health help near me. And then the other hand, it would be like, "What's the most pain-free way to die?" And, these sorts of really extreme searches. And I never really found anything that I could cling on to through that. And I think it's as amazing as resources online can be, there's almost too many. You almost can't really find anything, and you've got to navigate the paid ads and all these sorts of. I never really found anything. I never found anything I could cling on to. Nothing that helped. I kind of wanted to maybe create that. A lot of things that I was stumbling across, I didn't really see myself in, which is a ridiculous thing to say as like almost like middle-aged white man. But I didn't. There was no one telling stories that sounded like my story. There was no working class voices. Everything was very mindset focused, bro science, celebrity driven. There was nothing I saw myself in, and I wanted to create that, I suppose. I had this really romantic idea that I'd make a series of YouTube videos, and that maybe someone at their kitchen table at 3 a.m. on that pirate ship would stumble across them and be like, "Oh shit, man, this guy sounds like me, this guy looks like me, this guy's, he's saying the words that I really relate to that." So it kind of started from that. That's what it was supposed to be, and I just thought I'd put something up and just leave it, and maybe someone would find it, and that would be it. But yeah, it morphed into a podcast, and that's still going. But that was the rumblings of it. That was the beginning. I suppose creating that.
Not just going. It's 5 years on. I mean, that's quite incredible. I think that it's lasted that long, and that's obviously your passion. I love the fact that you said about that punk rock. So I just think that's probably hit a chord with all of us, because that idea where you said about where you fitted in, I think is really interesting. And the idea of punk rock, look, we're interested, we love music, but we can't, it's going to take 10, 15 years to be these, prog rock, fantastic rock gods. But we've got this passion, and we want to make noise, and we want to make music. We love all that in terms of our lyrics. And that's exactly what you've done. I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's a balance, I think, then, isn't it? Because then you want to give people that help and the information. So that's the self journey in terms of that you've done it. But I think that idea, that DIY, I think is a brilliant thing, because it is, we all, something happens at school, doesn't it? As teenagers and as young people, I think if you work in class and, racism, all of those things, but we do something, we beat it out of kids, so you're not confident. And we should be here, we should be up there, but we don't feel that, and we don't. And that's why I think music particularly was powerful for me, because then it was a road into, and people were talking about all sorts of stuff that just wasn't talked about. So it's finding that, isn't it? But you've done something, I think, beautiful from that. It's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. There's a lot to be said for just like starting. Like, I think if I'd have waited, so I never listen back to early episodes. But there's a lot of things that I think even like people I've spoke to, and I think, well, if I had the chance now, I probably wouldn't bother. And, because you learn more and you grow more and you get different ideas. And in my early episodes, it was very, very surface level, very like, it's okay not to be okay, very, wellness and these sorts of things, which is, is fine. There's a place for all of that. But now that's all the sort of stuff that I kind of want to like tear up. But,
that's
but
part
like,
of your journey though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Looking at the website, brilliant website you've got, by the way.
Thank you.
But the first episode, you've intentionally not got rid of that, and that's really important, because that is going back to what Ian was saying about that punk rock element, that rawness, that perhaps relatively unedited, using
no
basic
mics,
basic equipment and stuff like that, and you and your mate just having a chat, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And I was only like, crikey, I was only like a few months past a quite horrible, attempt on my own life. I was newly medicated. I was navigating all the side effects that come with medication. I was just kind of like figuring it out. I'd describe it as being like Bambi on ice, right? I've been off work. I've been on the couch for months, and like suddenly I'm having to re-engage. I'm having to do the school run again. I'm having to be in amongst people. And I was different. I was not the same guy that broke, and I was still, but I was like starting again. So I call my experience, for ease, I'll say it's like a mental health collapse or a breakdown or something like that. But really, for me, as I've come to understand it, it was an identity crisis, and the rug was pulled, and I had to start again from scratch. I had to rebuild myself, and that's all. Like, you can hear that in real time on those early episodes with no mics, no like nothing, just me chatting on Zoom. So it's pretty hard listen, but you got to start somewhere, right? Like, so many bands have got like a shit first album, haven't they? Like
dodgy EP.
Yeah, someone will think it's the best though, right? Maybe there's something in it.
So when you were starting to get feedback and listeners, and I suppose like the engagement through social media and things, did that just further encourage you? Oh, wow, this needs to be done. There's a place for this. Did you find that?
Yeah, I've quite a strange relationship with that, I think, because maybe at first, I think maybe through the podcast, it was giving me a sense of external validation that I kind of needed. But that I thought maybe I needed, or I certainly liked. My ego liked it, and I got very caught up in it, and my identity became wrapped in it. And then, of course, when things didn't go my way, then it became really hard to deal with, because it was far too close to me. So it's always nice when people say nice things. And if anyone's listened and got something out of it and it's helped, that's absolutely amazing. But yeah, there's also the kind of that thing as, I don't know, it's a funny one. I'm very good at being looked at. I'm not very good at being seen. And I really struggle with when people say nice things. So I have to constantly evaluate my relationship with it, and how much of it is ego, and how much of it is my own stuff I'm still dealing with, I suppose.
I just think that must be really interesting, because you've started it because of your own struggles, and then it's probably going to have huge impact on people straight away, because, as you say, it's so relatable. So if someone is going through things, they go, oh, that's the voice that I need at the moment. So I'm just kind of like thinking around the people that need it most. Do they ever reach out to you and say, thank you for this, it's helped me with, finding support, or it's given me the confidence to go and talk?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some lovely messages, and people seem to have, I suppose people get what they need from it, and that's it's really lovely that I can have like made that for for people, you know. I always kind of struggle with the amount of impact I did have, you know, because I was all like, well, this is nice, but how can I do more? Like, how can I like really get my hands dirty? You know, like that was always kind of a big thing for me. But the fact that people listen, the fact that people get stuff from it, and you know, a lot of it. So when it first came out, I did quite well out of the lived experience stuff, which I think stories are important. I'm always happy to tell my story, and I kind of I got asked to do loads of things, and it was really good. I really kind of enjoyed that, and that was great. But I don't even know if I had true command of like my own story. I think I was still quite mental at times, talking about stuff that had gone on, and I'm not quite sure I was in the right place or even the right person to do it at times. And it got to a point where like I was so far past everything that happened, I was like, I don't really want to talk about it anymore. Like I'm kind of done. I'm not him anymore. Like I've grown, and telling that story was almost keeping me trapped. It was like, well, I used to have like crippling anxiety, and now I don't really have anxiety anymore. So like, if I keep talking about him, how am I going to be? How am I going to step into this version of this this new version of me? And then I made like a really conscious effort, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And then of course all the opportunities dried up because everyone wants your sad story, So it's like I've got a really weird relationship with how it's received, and I suppose having so much of me that I've like put out there. But again, if I put anything out and someone connects with it, again, that original idea, maybe someone will just stumble over it when they need it. And if I like I said,
the thing is that we've had that many times where you've had people coming in saying the story, and we know they've said this countless time and time again. It's more or less just that like that, whatever. But it's still for us, our jaws. You're picking our jaws off the ground and things. That's what they've actually been saying. So yes, I do understand that it's this structure in a way what they actually aren't delivering, but it still does have that massive effect. And we've been in the job, and like as we've said before, this is therapy for us every time we come in here. But I do see that side to it. It's just like, it's not like move on. It's just always, well, I've now, been a bigger person, not a bigger person, but I've changed from that and things that's all through having these experiences as well.
People need to know that crisis that you were in for them to then relate and learn that you can get through it, and that's why it's so important to maintain that. Although I see what you're saying completely, that I'm going to move on myself, but it's just it's part of your self-discovery, isn't it?
Exactly that, mate. Yeah, it's all the journey, right? It's all the
journey.
Chapter in the book. Yeah, definitely.
So obviously you have guests where you share these conversations about their own experiences as well. So how does that kind of again sort of help you with your own journey, just being able to have these normal conversations?
It's something nice about like just meeting someone and within minutes being able to get deep. Like, I mean, you guys must get it all the time, really. You have 10 minutes of pleasantries, and it's like, let's just get into it. And I really like that. People's stories. There's so much. There's more similar stuff than there is differences, and it doesn't matter where you're coming from, in what direction. Sometimes I say it as in we all break in different ways, but it's kind of the same stuff that comes out when we do, and that's been really interesting to me. Exploring that with people, and just the amazing things that people do, like it's just incredible. Like when you get people who they set up these organizations, or they like come up with an idea and turn it into a reality, and it genuinely saves and changes lives, and you just think, wow, you can't be like uninspired.
You're in awe, aren't you?
100%. But for me, it also kind of makes things like really achievable, right? Because I always think, well, they're no different to me. Like the only difference between, I don't know, if I wanted to write a book, the only difference between me and the guy I interview who's written a book is that he wrote a book. I'm just talking about it, right? If you sit down and put enough words down, you'll have a book. Doesn't mean it's going to get published. Doesn't mean it's going to make you rich. But you're still written a fucking book. So it's like, so there's also that element of like, well, if they can start that, and that can be really good. Well, maybe I could start this, and this could be really good. And you get caught up in that creativity and that inspiration of people. But definitely. People just do amazing things. It's just unbelievable, really.
So how many guests are we talking? 300 and something guests then?
238 I think I'm on.
Wow, so that's a lot of inspiration, isn't it?
It's a lot of people.
238 people.
I sometimes forget. Like someone will say, "Oh, I really liked so and so," and I think, "Oh crap, I forgot I spoke to them." It's a lot to remember.
And it's every week.
It has been up until recently. I'm kind of on a bit of a bit of push and pull with it at the moment. I'm just kind of doing things that fall into my lap. I'm not actively seeking things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did one of every Monday for about 4 years, at least 4.5 years.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Once a month is hard.
Yeah, I know, it's incredible. Yeah, amazing. So I suppose like having that many guests, well, again, probably going back to that kind of question of why is it important then to give people with these lived experiences, why is it important to give them a voice on things like podcasts?
Well, I think like same way as I was looking for something that I could latch onto. Well, if everybody needs that, then we need variety. We need something different. There's no point just, I always think that even if I have a guest on who's quite well known and maybe they've done loads of interviews, and I always think, right, well, how can I take them somewhere else? Where can we go somewhere else with this? What's the point in just asking them the same questions they've been asked 100 times, And I think that's it, isn't it? I think when you're looking for that thing specific to you, like variation is the key. So you might listen one week and think, that's not really, that's not really got me, and you might listen the week after and think, I feel really seen by this, I feel really connected to this. So I think that variation's the key, right? It's like constantly shuffling the pack and trying to create something for everyone. But then that said, some of my favourite podcasts I will listen even if I've never heard of who they're talking to, right? Because you trust the host, you like the style, and they're often the ones where you think like, oh my god, like now I've got a new favourite band that I didn't know about, and I would have missed out if I hadn't have listened. So, like hopefully, over a while I've kind of built that thing where people will just say, well, if they're on, there's got to be something in there for me. And I know I've had episodes where in the moment I've been like, this bit of it is amazing, I really, really love that. And then maybe I have to revisit it like a year later and there's something else that has now come back round. Like it didn't hit me at the time, but now my life's changed, things have changed. Oh my God, that bit, I missed it completely. So that kind of mining for gold element is really cool.
One thing we often get as well is like the guests that we've had, very thankful that we've kind of give them the platform to tell their story. That's the reason why we set up. But it's what they get out of it as well. We don't just think about the listeners because we've been told so many times. Like a classic example, we've had guests who have said, oh God, it's so good that I've been able to do this in such a comfortable format. Whereas if you were to go and ask me to do it in front of 300 of your students, you've got no chance, So I think a lot of guests that we've had have also been like, this is the perfect way for me to tell my story, rather than, as I say, big conferences or lecture theatres. Have you had sort of like similar experiences to that as well?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of sense. I kind of love this idea that, when you're on a train and there might be like a couple behind you and you can hear them chatting, and then after a while you kind of take your AirPod out and you're wigging in, right? And then when the train stops and they get off and you're looking out the window going, which one was Margaret? And you want to, and like I love the intimacy of podcasting, that's what it is, it's as if someone's just kind of like stumbled into a conversation and you're just listening and you get dragged into it. And I think, that is really, really something. Often, you really don't get to the crux of something. A lot of my ideas will form in real time, and you don't get that if you're doing a talk or in a conference room, like you say. You don't always get there. You're hitting beats. It's almost performative. But when you're having a conversation, it can go anywhere, And that was a really interesting learning thing for myself. So as someone who's previously experienced a lot of anxiety, my way to deal with that anxiety was perfectionism, right? If I can control every single inch of my life and be great at everything, nothing will go wrong and I'll be fine, I'll be safe. So that was my mentality to everything. And then sometimes you have an episode and it doesn't really go where you want it to go, or you really want to ask something and you don't get the chance, or you might get an answer you weren't really expecting, and it's got to go out anyway.
We've experienced that.
Yeah.
Looking at Ian.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Like accepting that it is what it is, and you've captured what you have in the moment, and that's got to be it. Yeah, and you kind of think,
I think the last podcast we did, we had the ex mayor of Liverpool, Gary Miller, and he said everyone's story deserves to be told. And I thought, God, such a good way of looking at it. And I think with the amount of podcasts that you've done, it is that, isn't it? It's just at the end of the day, this is my story, and getting out there is just as important. Everyone deserves for their story to be told.
There's also that other thing as well. You might not have thought it went very well, but somebody listened to it. That might be one
exactly.
guest that really resonated with them and made them go and get support or whatever. So it's kind of like a different set of ears, like a different set of eyes, different opinions, isn't it?
No, it's true. It's all about that expectation, isn't it, that you kind of place on it, and like I say, expecting it to go one way and then it pivots, and it's like, now I've got to deal with that. But
I mean, the challenge for you, I think, is that you're on your own, whereas I think, and the challenge for us is that there's 4 of us, so there's always, but we bounce from each other, and as Conor said, is right. I think we've grown as 4 people from it. I've certainly learned loads in terms of from mental health, but it's been a real important thing for us because there's a friendship that's come from it, but also we've got this guest on, and then you have the opportunity to listen. The difficulty or the challenge for you is that you are in the moment, so you'll be thinking, God, that was so insightful from that bit, but then you're thinking it through and listening, and then it's like catching up, isn't it? And I guess that's always the challenge, but obviously you're astute, I think, of actually living in that moment and making the most of it, but that's always a challenge, is navigating that, isn't it, and being that authentic person in that time where you're also listening, and so that's the difficulty, isn't it, and the challenge.
The challenge, and that's what, that's how you learn from things, So it's something I like to say, more in my work, if I'm supporting someone and maybe we're dealing with anxious thinking and these sorts of things, is like how you do the little things is how you do the big things, So you don't, if like, I don't know, if one of you was scared of dogs, I don't walk in here with a massive dog and say, like, let's make friends. Maybe we start by looking at a picture across the room, and you build up to it. And so for me, having these conversations in real time and having to react and having to be like, oh, crikey, I wasn't expecting this, and, these sorts of things. Or that I was able to take a lot of that and kind of internalize it, and then that plays into how I interact with my day-to-day life, So suddenly I'm not 100%. Yeah. Suddenly I'm not so controlling in other areas of my life and things like that. I think that the opposite of anxiety is curiosity, right? Yeah. And that's one of the most important things I've learned, is that flicking that switch from an anxious mindset to a curious mindset. Game changer. Not easy to do, but absolutely.
Well, let's build on that. One of the questions I really want to ask you, because you're hundreds of episodes deep, is what have you personally learned from running the Proper Mental podcast yourself? But I suppose build on that, really.
So that's I think just learning to trust. So for me, was learning to trust myself, to just kind of figure it out on the fly was huge, and trying to turn that, what if this happens? What if this happens? More into what if this happens? What if this happens? And it's just a subtle shift, and it took a lot of practice for me. And maybe from things that I learned through the podcast. Often someone will say something, and it'll really like ring a bell. When someone like holds a little mirror up, and you're kind of like, oh crikey, I didn't really want to learn that about myself today. And then I'll take it to therapy, and I'll talk about it in my therapy sessions and stuff like that. But that sort of anxious mindset, curious mindset, that was huge for me. And I did a lot of work on that just day to day, and I still do it now, but whenever I feel that little push and pull of anxiety, so the way my therapist would say it is like, she said to me, you have to learn to be more immediate. So if I'm in a situation, I don't know, I could be out with like my wife and kids, we could be getting lunch somewhere, and maybe you ask for the bill, and then the bill doesn't come, and it's 10 minutes, and my kids are getting restless, and my wife's getting pissed off and stuff like that. And there's a version of me who had been like, I know I should go and ask again, but I really don't want to upset the kitchen staff. And the waitress, she did look stressed, and I don't want to annoy her. And when you like, there was all this anxiety around it. And so, on that process of building the more curious outlook, it'd be like, right, as soon as I feel that resistance, go and ask. Straight away. Don't give myself time to think. Boom, act on it. And it could be as simple as like going up to the bar and saying, "Oh, can I have the bill, please?" And then you realise that they just forgot, and it's not a problem to ask. I'm well within my rights to ask, And then you get the bill and you find, and everyone's happy, and you leave, and it's great. And you think, "Oh, right, brilliant." And just doing that with little things over and over again. I used to get like, it's amazing to think about now, but. Before we started this, I said, can I use your toilet? I wouldn't have done that. If there was a version of me, I would have sat here for 2 hours, do you know what I mean?
Legs crossed.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have asked, So it's these little things, and you build them up, and that's how you do the big things, is by doing the small things. Yeah.
When I met you we were both at the conference in Liverpool, and Dean said to me, he said, "Oh, that's Tom across the way there, and he does this, he does the mental podcast." He said, "It's really good." And I said, "Oh, what does it cover?" And Dean was time, and I was thinking, oh my God, he's doing the same as us. And I was thinking, oh, right, okay. But then you just came over, and I just thought, how good that you'd come over, introduced yourself, and were talking to us. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing that you'd just come over. I was thinking, not that we were rivals or anything like that. I was interested, but I just thought it was great that you just came over straight off. And I think that leans on that, what you're saying about that curiosity. So obviously you Dean and stuff as well, but then you were interested in us, and I thought I was dead impressed with that. I just thought it was just dead powerful because you came up, how's it going, what do you do, and I just thought that's I just think it is that curiosity. So it's that's, strength.
Collaboration over competition, right? Every single time. But also, like, it's dead weird when you kind of, when you kind of know people off social media, but you never really, and like we talk messages on social media, wasn't really sure which one of you ran the account, so I never really knew who I was talking to. So sometimes it's just easier when you like say hello, and then kind of everyone's names, and it just becomes normal then.
But you also know then straight away whether people are kidding and what people are like, I think, and that's what I loved about that you just came over and it was straight away. I'm not saying broke the ice, but there was that in an element. I just thought it was just dead good that you did it. So I thought, I love this bloke straight off. So, it's dead important to make that first move. So as you said, it's that curiosity over anxiety, because I guess in the past you'd have been, oh my God, there's the manhood podcast. Do you know what I mean? It's that. So
we see that in like we talk about men's mental health as well. So my way around any sort of anxiety, because of course you can't admit any sort of weakness, right? I can't say I'm weakness. So how do you do it? Well, I posture up. I walk big, puff my chest out. Do you know what I mean? Like, fuck them, they're shit. Do you know what I mean? Like this sort of that was my way of dealing with everything. And of course, all that does is just push people away. And then I don't want to admit that I've pushed people away. So I say things like, I'm one of life's solo artists. I don't need people. I can fucking sort it out myself. Do you know what I mean? I'll fucking fix anything, me. And like that sort of mindset. And then all I ended up is just, lonelier and lonelier, more on my own, more problems to solve without the tools to solve them. And it's very much, but that would have been my way of dealing with any anxious thing, was just posture up. Do you know what I mean? Just be grumpier and louder and more aggressive. Yeah.
There's an element of sort of masculinity there, the toxic masculinity of not letting anybody in. I'm the big guy, take it all on my shoulders, and
very much so.
As we've found out over the last sort of 238 podcasts and however many we've on now, 40. It doesn't work. Does it? Being the big I am, as my dad used to say, is not conducive to a good mental health. And
it's easy though, isn't it, as a man to like fall? I don't know if you guys kind of experience that side of it as well. Like particularly like I know you guys were into music and stuff like that. The bands I grew up, it was like like 90s, and the Gallagher brothers weren't showing much fucking vulnerability. Do you know what I mean? Like
very laddish behaviour.
And that's what you did, and it wasn't cool to try, and it wasn't cool. You just kind of you just got on with it. And
social conditioning, isn't it?
100%.
At the end of the day, which we need to tackle, because it's clearly not working for a lot of men with the suicide rates at what they are. So I think I think a lot. I look at situations in my life where I've really, really like postured up to stuff, and it's all through like a place of fear and not really knowing who I was. So I was fearful in situations because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I am, so I can't trust myself to react to my environment. And that's that's the angle I kind of start to dwell on a little bit. With like men's mental health, is like how much of it is about identity, right? So because yes, like masculinity and this idea of what it is a man is a real problem, but why, right? Like, why is it so much easier to step into one skin rather than step into another thing? And it's something I'm still kind of like, this is one of my ideas that's forming in real time. But this idea of like identity and not knowing who the fuck you are. Because if you know who you are, you can always come back to yourself, right? And you can trust yourself in different situations. And without that, then there's a need to fill that gap to be something that you're not. To put that mask on. If you put enough masks on, you kind of you lose sight of the face underneath.
We mentioned before, Tom, about the post that you put on your Instagram around Christmas time. It really did move me, and I think looking at the post now, how many people are grateful and thankful that you put something so open and honest out. Where you shared the photograph from 6 years ago. When you kind of like reflect now on the last 6 years, what have been the sort of like the big changes? What's been the big things that have helped you move on from these really dark times you were discussing?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, mate. I kind of wanted to, the reason I wanted to kind of highlight some aspects of my own experiences there, because I think there's a lot of talk of like, you know, I was really, really struggling, but now I run ultra marathons and everything's great. Yeah. And we don't really talk about the middle bit. We don't really talk, you know, like there was times when, you know, I went out, you know, with the intention of taking my own life once on a Sunday. And by Monday I was at work and I was at my desk. And I remember looking around and thinking like, fuck me, I tried to kill myself last night. No one knows. Yeah. No one fucking knows. Everyone is just like, oh, you know, are you getting a coffee in? Or why haven't you done this? Or, you know, like, no one talks about that day to day. You know, I used to get hung up on the bad side of it and all that, because I really did raise like havoc in my life. You know, I really was unwell with no help, and I was just like knocking about. I was going to work, I was doing stuff, I was out and about in the community. I was really quite unhinged, and I was focused on the bad things. And my wife said to me once, she was like, yeah, but in amongst that there was good things too. We had family holidays that were great, you know, and no one really talks about that ebb and flow of life where you can have real certain darkness in the morning and then by the afternoon be having like a coffee with a mate, you know. And that's kind of what I highlighted there. I always remember the first ever time I went to therapy, I was working for the NHS and they referred me in because I'd been like behaving quite weird at work, and you know, I waited ages for this appointment. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to say something now. I'm going to try and get help. I'm going to fix myself this time. I really am. I'm going to commit to this process. And then I got out of work early so I could go to this appointment, and the sun was shining. And I remember it was around about it was one of the first Mick Head solo albums had come out, and I just bought it, and I had Mick on the stereo, and I was driving to Chester for this appointment, and the sun was out and the sky was blue, and I sat down in front of this woman, and she was house things. So I was like, they're fucking great, and I felt amazing. Yeah. And I told her, you know, oh, I'm a bit stressed and I've been a bit down, and you know, all this sort of stuff. And then she was like, oh, do you think you want to come back? I was like, no, I feel this is amazing. No, I feel great. But she got me on a good afternoon. And if she'd have got me like a week previous, I'd have been on the floor. She'd have been scraping me up, you know. So it's that kind of that middle bit. I've kind of forgot your original question.
No, it's good. Because I think these are all stages of, I'd say, from 6 years ago, and then to like where you are now. You know, where you're in a job where you're helping other people. You know, so obviously there's been big changes in your life during that to get you to the stage where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, if you'd have told me what was coming, I would have said no. Not possible for someone like me. Not like this. I didn't see any sort of. I used to think that around about when all that was going on, I'd have been sort of mid to late 30s maybe, and I used to think, well, you know, with a bit of luck, you know, I'm halfway through, you know, with a bit of luck, and the idea of doing another 35 of this, I can't do it. Is that I can't. I'm fucking exhausted. I've tried, you know, I now know with a bit of understanding, I probably had problems with my mental health as far back as my teens, certainly, if not before. And I was like, I can't do any more of this. That is it. I have to find a way out. It's just that fucking simple. But I never really thought about getting better as a way out. So the idea that I could even be well and be normal, it was just a hope and a prayer. I'd get up every morning, I'd put my feet on the floor, I'd stand up, and I'd just be fingers crossed today it's not one of those awful days. I just hope. That's all I had was hope that it wouldn't be a bad day. And then sometimes I've had a good week, I'd have a good month, I'd have 2 good months, and it's like, this is fucking amazing. I've cracked it. This is sorted. It's all behind me now. And then, you know, next thing you know, I'm fucking, you know, up to all sorts of mad stuff, and you know, it's all gone dark again, just like that. And I felt I had no control over it. So the idea that I could even be quote unquote normal, whatever that is, and have a normal life and have like a job and, you know, like be a good dad and this sort of stuff, alien concept to me. Let alone that I could, you know, end up like talk to people about mental health, let alone that I could like sit in communities with people and make a difference. It's like, wow, I never saw it coming. Never saw it coming. No.
What steps did you have to take to get to that stage then?
Initially, the thing that kind of got me out of the worst of it was medication, which I don't advocate for or against. You know, it's a very, very like personal thing. But for me, essentially, I'd carved out a period of time where so my family are from Wales originally, and I was done, and I decided, all right, that's it. I need, this trying to kill myself isn't working. I need to make some space to make this happen. And I planned this trip down to my mum's, and I told my wife, like, I can't stay around here anymore. I need to go home for a bit. So I said goodbye to my wife and my kids, and I went down to Wales. And the plan was to see my mum and dad and my family and stuff like that. And when I drove back, I'd have this little pocket of time where I've said goodbye to everyone in my life. No one knows where I was, and I could do what I needed to do. And while I was down, I ended up having a conversation with my auntie, who's an occupational health nurse. She works in so I'm from Llanelli, which is like, there's a lot of tin in Llanelli, and she works in a factory with about 500 men. So she must have just spotted. It must have just been another like depressed looking man. And we had this kind of conversation, and I did my usual, I'm fine, I'm just a bit stressed, I'm just a bit tired. And she told me a story about her taking medication. And like the idea that my auntie she's the loudest, she's the most beautiful, positive. She's like a local celebrity where we're from in Wales. She was on Leslie's Come Dine with me, and like everybody knows her name. She's just amazing. And the idea that this incredible woman could have had help with her mental health, I never knew that. And I'd written a note, and in this note for my kids, I'd put, Daddy, sorry, he's tried everything. And then when she was telling me that, I was thinking, I'm fucking lying because I haven't tried everything. Right, there's one more thing to try. Let's put a pin in this. Let's come back to it. So I phoned my wife and I said, "Can you get me an appointment with the doctor?" I tried medication, and that kind of got me out of the pit. That allowed me to start, engaging in therapy. It allowed me to start. It allowed all the other stuff I'd been trying to start working. So that was probably the biggest starting point. Therapy, I've done a lot. I still go to therapy now. For different reasons, more just for just to explore myself and try and be a better, dad and husband and person in general, to keep learning about myself. But therapy was huge. I became trapped in a cycle for a little bit where, if something bad had happened, maybe I'd have some like financial difficulties or something, like a big stress in my life. And I'd just snap back to where I was, and I'd end up back on medication. It took me a long time to break that cycle. Every time something bad happened, I just ran to the doctor and got meds. And it took me a long time to realise, hang on, like I don't have a quote unquote serotonin issue. I have a stress issue, and I have a low tolerance issue, and a lack of resilience issue, and a lack of tools issue. So again, that was part of the learning process. That was part of so it took years. It took years, and a lot of there's times when I felt really well, and then that was a really big lesson actually from the podcast. I was talking to someone, and she was telling me about she was someone who does lots of shows around mental health and goes up to Edinburgh and does these shows and stuff like that. And she was talking about performative surface level engagement. How you can hide in your story and tell your story to avoid doing any work to change your story. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, fucking, that's what I do. I turn this microphone on. I tell all people like this like sad story, but I don't actually do anything to change it. Like I'm stuck. I'm treading water. So that was like, straight back to therapy, back to carry on doing the work, and so I did, medication in the first point, lots of self-discovery, lots of answering difficult questions. You have to really kind of admit some horrible things about yourself if you want to change. It's not nice. It's still not pleasant. And then doing the work, because I don't think that gets talked about enough. Yeah, I think actually actively seeking to do things differently, identifying cycles, breaking them, changing things. And that work never stops, but it's at a point now where it doesn't make me poorly anymore if I'm not constantly doing it. They're probably the main things really.
Yeah, it's amazing advice. And again, if anyone is kind of listening and they feel like how Tom's felt, it just shows you, as you said, everyone's unique and individual, and certain things are going to work for certain people, aren't they? But you tried things, you tried medication, you tried therapy, self-discovery, so you were very active in doing things. You weren't just going to get better the next day. No one was going to get better for you. You had to do them, didn't you? Yeah, and for a long time, I really avoided those things. Like they say, the answers lie in the work you're avoiding, right? And that's what I avoid. People say, why don't you go to the doctor? I'm not going to the doctor, I don't want to be put on medications. I'll get fat. I'll all this sort of stuff. And no, I'm not doing that. I'll go and do yoga. I actually trained to be a yoga teacher. That's how I did so much spiritual bypassing. It's incredible. There was a time when I had read every book in the Amazon top 20 self-help bestsellers, and I could quote them, and I could tell you all about them, but I wasn't doing anything differently. I was just reading fucking books, because that stopped me making changes to my life that were going to make my life different. It's that whole thing of everything might be shit,
but I know every inch of this shit. And if I do anything differently, then the unknown, and that could be worse. So even though like there's a lot of horrible stuff going on, there's a certain amount of comfort in that. And I couldn't step out. But yeah, I tried a lot of things. Crikey, yeah. You name it. You name it, if it's a course or a class or a group or you name it. I tried it, but until I changed me, that was the difference. Because the world doesn't change, does it? It's like how we perceive it, right? Whatever's going on out that window is going on right now, and it's just how I perceive that, and my role in it is the only thing I have control over. So yeah, that was the big shift.
So with this podcast being, let's say, focusing for our University Mental Health Day, we've given a really good a resource there for any students or staff who are listening in terms of the Proper Mental podcast. Please do go out, have a listen, and hopefully a lot of these episodes will resonate with you. But one thing I wanted to definitely pick up with you, Tom, was about what advice you'd give to anyone who's currently struggling with their mental health. So again, if we've got students, for example, who are listening, what's kind of your main sort of like bits of advice that you've, again, either learned from your own discovery or from guests you've had on the podcast?
I mean, that's a great question. And there's loads of things that immediately jump to mind, I'm a big fan of compassion, of like self-compassion and getting you through things with compassion. And, it's such a funny thing because like the first thing I want to say is like, oh, well, reach out and ask for help and all these things, which is so important. I'm also really, really reluctant to ask the person who is going through it to do all the heavy lifting, and that wouldn't, none of that messaging worked for me if I saw it when I was poorly. I don't remember seeing it, so it is a really, really difficult one. I think what people are often surprised in, so I kind of think from a student perspective, I mean, I never went to uni, but I've had jobs where I've worked and travelled and I've lived in different places and things like that. And I personally believe that Liverpool and Merseyside in general is blessed with support organisations. I could list off the top of my head without a blink of an eye probably about 20 or 30. And if you gave me half an hour, I could double that list, And I think really knowing what is out there, I think is wonderful. Since, like now, I could give you that list. When I needed that list, I didn't know. I couldn't name one. I couldn't have told you one. Like, maybe the Samaritans because I'd seen someone phone them on EastEnders. I didn't know it at all. So I think it's definitely worth seeing what's out there because there'll be something for you because there's so much variation, and that's a really beautiful thing. I'm a big fan of controlling the controllables. Basics are important. It's so cliche, isn't it? But if you can make yourself feel 1% better, and you could do that every day, then by the end of a week, you're a little bit different. By the end of 2 weeks, a little bit different. And even things like, just crikey sleep and eating some vegetables, and these sorts of things. With people that I work with, sorry, I'm going on one now, but the people I work with, what I think is really, really huge is like loneliness and isolation and these sorts of things, And I think if we can, connect with people and find, something to do, somewhere to do it, and someone to do it with. Often I sit with people and, through First Person Project, our kind of ethos is like we get to know the people that we support, so I want to, I don't care about your label, I don't care about your story initially, we'll get to that. I want to know about you. I want to know, what are you into? What do you give a shit about? What do you like? What do you not like? And you find out about people and, maybe someone will say, I'm like, I'm really into football, I love playing five-a-side, I used to play with my mates, it's great, it's really good for my mental health. And you go, brilliant, when's the last time you played? And they go, not for a couple of years. Let's start there, So I think it's like, I think we forget about fun. I know I've just sat here for 20 minutes talking about doing the work, right? But you can't have all work and no play. And I think there's not a lot of fun in life if you don't actively go out and seek it. And I think that's when you're a bit lonely, when you're disconnected, you're away from home, it's like, well, how do we have fun that isn't just going out and just getting fucking banjoed on a Saturday? Like, what else is there, I think there's something in that as well, I think.
Well, that's a huge part of therapy, isn't it? It's just not just about talking. It's the big part of the toolkit is having fun and being kind to yourself. And I still see patients, and a lot of the time as a patient's leaving, if I've spoke to them about their mental health, I'll say to them, remember to be kind to yourself. And I also say to them that deep down, you can talk to me or a therapist or psychiatrist, whoever you want, but you're the person who holds all the cards. You're the one with all the power. You just need to embrace yourself and go on that journey that you've been down, that you just articulated beautifully. And you'll never fully understand yourself, but that's okay. You don't have to fully understand yourself to be happy. And you know, doing things that make you tick is a massive part of any person's good mental health, isn't it?
You touched on there what we used to call it creative recovery, and that's just a way of just saying, if you're working with someone to get them better, do something that, you know, is kind of creative. It doesn't have to be textbook, it doesn't have to be therapy or medication. But it was really interesting what you said there, because like as a community mental health nurse, I wasn't bothered about the diagnosis. I wasn't even bothered about their symptoms when I'd make them. I want to know what football team they supported, what band they liked, you know. When was the last time that they went fishing or climbed up a mountain or anything like that. And if it was something there that I could see where it'd get them out of bed tomorrow, then yeah, we'll run with that. All of the rest can come later. And that to me is creative recovery. Is what will get you out of bed tomorrow? That was the creativeness. You know what I mean? And if I could be there with them to take them fishing or take them football or play guitar, you know, guitars and play music with them, whatever it was, that was kind of creative. So it's lovely to hear that you're still doing that with first person as well, that whole thing. But it's so important, I think, as you say, again, if anyone is listening and they're kind of thinking, you know, they're struggling, there's lots of other ways how you can address that later on. But the important thing is that connection at first, isn't it? You know, that find a connection with someone, whether it is through a society, a group, project, whatever it is in your local community. Once your confidence grows with them, your confidence will grow to talk about other things, really.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's really frustrating, isn't it? Because there's so many things that they sound so like trite or like throwaway, you know, like almost like memes, but they're so true, aren't they? Like the basics really are, you know, they really are true. And it's there's definitely something in that. I suppose the challenge is, how do we get people who are struggling to kind of to listen to these things? Because I was very much I always think about my own experience because it's the only lens I have to look at things, right? And I was just to the point of aggression was like arm's length. And if you'd there's that thing, isn't it? It's like always reach out twice. But if someone reached out to me, I say, yeah, I'm fine. If they reached out twice, I say, will you fucking leave me alone? Like, you know, I'm not having this. Like, it wasn't the case they asked twice and I crumbled and went, actually, I'm really sad. You know, so it's like, how do we kind of break down those, to like really...
It's one thing we touch on an awful lot on the podcast, because we bring on so many different projects and organisations and charities, and we say the same thing there, you know, what you've got, whether it is that is Andy's Man Club or First Person or the Florrie, whatever it is, it's amazing, but how do we get them there? So we're always looking at methods that people use, and it is good to hear that, you know, a lot of people will maybe do it via a video call first, just to have a quick chat with someone, or they'll meet them outside the building on another day just to show them. You've got to take a lot of tiny steps sometimes to get people to these places. But God, the stories we've heard once people are through those doors is just, you know, it's incredible, isn't it? You know, and you must see that all the time, and with First Person as well. Yeah,
definitely. You know, if you can meet someone where they're at, you know, and it's like, I can't do it for you, but I can walk alongside you, right? With first person projects, I'm really, really blessed because, you know, we exist to remove barriers. It's that simple. So if there's a barrier, it's part of my job description is to, well, let's fucking figure out how to do something about this. And I can go to someone's house and I can meet them down the street and I can start over the phone. And there's been so many people who come to our groups and they do our courses and they're really valued members of our community. And it started off like, I just used to phone them once a week, you know, like, because that's how I met them where they were at, you know. It's a really really beautiful thing. But so you know, it's important that people know that things like that out there and exist, right? Because it's, like I say, it's often we ask the people who are struggling to do the heavy lifting. And
one of the things just related to this University Mental Health Day, we read a report, I think it was last year, it might have been the Student Union, and they looked at students in particular who were struggling with their mental health, how many of them were likely to access internal support at the university as opposed to external support. And it was quite shocking, really. You know, there was a huge proportion of students that didn't want to access university support because they might be worried that someone in their class finds out. They might think that it has an impact on them getting thrown off the course. There was a whole list of things. And I think that's why it's important for things like the Hub of Hope, for example, a resource you can have in your pocket, which is basically the Just Eat, isn't it, of mental health. You can find what exists around that university area where you're staying, and you can go and access that. And a lot of the places there don't have waiting lists, you know, such as First Person Project, where you can go and it's open door, you can go and be seen. And I think for a lot of people, they would prefer that external support over internal for whatever reasons we've spoke about. So I think, tools like that are really, really valuable. And, you know, I teach all of my student nurses the same thing. Keep it in your pocket for if you need to signpost someone to it. You know, you don't have to be the professional. It's about helping someone get the professional help, isn't it? And that signposting for it. Really.
Signposting, isn't it? Yeah, if you know what's out there, then you've always got something to recommend to someone, or to you know, that's like I say, getting these things known. That's definitely the hardest part. Yeah,
we've had a lot of men, haven't we, who've, you know, maybe tried different projects as well, and then it's the one where they've gone, oh God, but as soon as I went in this one, that was the one that changed my life, saved my life, you know. And because, and as you said before, we're so lucky in the sort of like whole Liverpool City region that we are blessed with incredible charities and organisations where they are picking up the slack of huge waiting lists for NHS and psychology services, mental health services, and majority of them have got these open door policies where you can just go and, you know, access the support now. So I think things like the Hub of Hope, honestly, if you haven't got it, download it. It might be that you just show a friend. If you're concerned about someone in your halls, for example, it might be that you just sit down with a cup of coffee and show them what exists. Internal support might be for you, and that's great because all universities now have amazing student advice and wellbeing services. You know, how long have people here worked in universities? How long have you worked on this?
I don't know, I was thinking that the other day.
Yeah, I think I've worked 10 years, I think I have, between this university and my last one. And even as a student over 20 years ago at a university, I am blown away by what is offered to students now in terms of support and advice. It is incredible, you know, it really is. Everything from advice to do with finances right the way up to instant counselling.
But it's like I said, it's like, you know, having that access, having that awareness to it. It's like this thing that we've been roped into, this Uniman within the university. It's sharing it out to people. And so what I've been doing with post-reg students, I'm going, look what's available. Like, you know, even they've got free laundry, like, you know, they give away free laundry, you know, for doing your washing and things. So go here and get it, like, you know, financial advice, so many different things, and it's brilliant, like, you know, but it's get it out there, like, you know. So I just keep promoting it on on
but we are so blessed. I think I've looked the other I think 99% of universities or higher education all have students advice, wellbeing provision, you know. So there is internal support for students, which is incredible because it didn't exist when I was a student, for example. But then, as say, if that's not for you, then and you want external support, we've got that as well, you know, in abundance, haven't we? So we are so lucky compared to, I'd say, when we were all students, when there was none of this available, really. So
we're speaking about students a lot here, but speaking as a former university lecturer now, I think it's also important that University Mental Health Day is for the actual lecturers as well, because working as a university lecturer can be extremely
anyone in the university community.
Yeah, exactly. So accessing support, regardless whether you're a student or a member of staff, is equally as important, because the service is there for you as well. You know, occupational health referrals, the Hub of Hope. If you're struggling, it's particularly difficult to you know, when you're standing up in front of a class full of students in a lecture every day, and people looking at you and thinking, well, they must be okay, they've got it sorted, they're a university lecturer, but deep down you're struggling. Don't suffer in silence. Access support, because, you know, the mental health, you know, your mental health is just as important as
because the thing is, well, you've got to think of a lot of the undergrad students coming here and previous and coming up as well. It's the, you know, we had COVID. It's basically they were locked away for so long and things like this, whatever. They didn't interact for 2 years, like, you know, practically. You know, we know the repercussions of it are going to last a long time. So hopefully this is a way that you maybe try to deal with that, cope with that, things like this. We're never going to, you know, it's just trying to think of those things, trying to think ahead, what is the potential, what can actually happen here. But, you know, people very quickly forgot all about COVID, you know, and the issues with that.
So final big plug for us then. So I say the big thing we wanted with this podcast, because we're such big advocates for promoting with students and staff about, you know, obviously really good podcasts and, you know, that have lived experience voices. So tell everyone, how can they follow you?
Yeah.
How can they subscribe?
all the usual places, really. You know, wherever you get podcasts from, you'll find me. Yeah, it pops up all over the place. But yeah, all the usual ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So Proper Mental Podcast. Do a search on all of the podcasting platforms, Instagram as well, because you put quite a lot of really good clips on there, don't you, from your podcast as well, which are always really fascinating. So give it a follow on Instagram as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well,
Spot on.
guys, it's been a really interesting chat. And Tom, thank you so much for sharing your story, because honestly, it is really inspirational, mate. But also as well, the work that you've done after, you know, your own struggles and everything is just, it's really inspirational. And we're massive fans of First Person Project as well, you know. So all of the work you guys are doing there as well, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. No, and thanks for having me today, man. It's been sick. It's been fun. Yeah, it's cool.
Amazing. Thanks, guys.
We can all play a role in suicide prevention. Spotting the signs and starting a conversation with someone you're worried about can feel daunting.
But free online training from the Zero Suicide Alliance could help you gain the skills and confidence to have a potentially life-saving conversation.
It takes just 30 minutes and you never know when you might need to use it.
Be prepared. Take the training today. Visit zerosuicidealliance.com or search ZSA Suicide Awareness Training, because one life lost is one too many.
If you or anybody else you know is struggling with their mental health, visit hubofhope.co.uk or download the app today and find local and national mental health support.